Dinner Bus, The Journey Onward by Master Atlan. Chapter 50, Come Together. He opened his locker and inspected his new set of equipment. His Kodachi, Squall, now fixed with a longer hilt. He picked up the black sheath with orange highlight. It was carried in and secured it to his back. He reached down and grabbed the armor gifted to him by Tenten and Tive, created from his old swords, Stormguard, locking them along his forearms. He took a moment to get accustomed to the weights. This would be the first time fighting with them. He looked at where they ended at his wrist and saw the little hook to tie around the wrist of his pommel. He opened the guards and saw the motor inside the feed and pull wire through, as well as a few spare clips filled with his new arrows. Tivit had figured it would be faster changing them out like magazines than having to fill in new arrows individually. Naruto loved his new equipment. He turned towards the exit and tied his headband a little tighter. Here we go. Hunting. So Naruto's my new friend and everything, but Seiju's my teammate. Sun scratched his cheek awkwardly. You guys aren't gonna hate me for cheering against him, right? Really? Neptune shook his head. You're gonna ask if you can support your team? No, never, man, never. I'm just clearing things up with them is all. And Sun looked back at them with worry. You're not, right? It's cool, but you better be ready. Ruby grinned. Your friend's gonna get his butt kicked. Go, Naruto! Oh, no way. Come on, Sage. Sun joined in on the cheering. Show them what we got. The two young men standing in the center of the stage eyed each other over as Glinda prepared to fight. Naruto took the chance to inspect the new boy from Haven. This guy looked strong. His muscles were well developed and trained, as evidenced through the opening in his coat. Apparently covering yourself was not something Sun and his teammates did regularly. Another point of interest was the immense blade secured to his back. It was nearly the size of his whole body. If he didn't secure it to his back at an angle, there was probably a thread of it dragging along the ground. And when he saw Sage walk out with his body straight and careful movements, Naruto knew that he was making up for the sword's weight on his back. That sword was heavy, and heavy weapons were dangerous, but they were also slow. That made Naruto at least had a speed advantage. He might be able to overwhelm his green-haired opponent with mobility and movement. After that, he would just have to chip down his aura into the red like he did with Yang, their first week here. Chikaku was right about more tactical thinking when facing an opponent. And Sun told us a lot about you guys since we've arrived. Sage spoke up before shaking his head. Like non-stop. It's actually kind of annoying at this point. Oh, sorry. Naruto lamely answered with a shrug of his shoulders. If it makes you feel any better, I think Sun's pretty cool too. That's nice, but don't tell him that. He'd probably lose his mind. Got it. Naruto nodded and smiled, getting a small amused look from Sage. He seemed like a cool guy. He'd probably be pretty cool to hang around with once this fight was over. All set. Glinda finally stepped up to the middle. This will be a fight between Mr. Uzumaki and Mr. Ayana. Tournament rules. Are you both ready? They nodded. Ready. Begin! Naruto's hand instinctively felt on the hilt of Squall as Sage reached behind his back. With a grunt, he pulled the massive sword off his back and lowered it to the ground. Naruto gulped when he saw the large boy grip the sword with both hands to lift and aim at him. He ran and pulled his sword back before swinging in a massive arc towards Naruto's body. The blonde quickly jumped back and avoided the tip of the massive sword. He felt the gust of wind following the blade as the dark-skinned teenager spun with his sword. Naruto pulled out his Kodachi and charged Sage, but Sage wasn't leaving himself open. He followed with the momentum of his swing, spinning around and swinging his giant sword again with even more power behind it. Naruto's eyes widened as he sprung up from the ground and flipped over the blade before it could cleave through him. Naruto thrust his Kodachi as Sage blocked it with the end of his hilt. The blade scraped against the hilt with Naruto's attack averted. Sage lifted his sword and brought the sword down towards the blonde. The fox pulled away as the blade cracked the ground. Naruto stopped in the crotch and yelled as he kicked out into Sage's knees and toppled him over. He jumped back up to his feet and swung his Kodachi down as Sage pulled his blade over to block his head. The blades cut against each other as Sage kicked off the floor to put distance between them. Naruto turned the blade in his hand before pulling the trigger and firing arrows at the Haven student. Sage's eyes widened and he raised his arms to block the force of the projectiles. He grabbed his massive sword and pulled slid in front of him to block the next wave of arrows from landing. The blonde opponent clicked his teeth and hooked his wire to Squall's pommel. The wire extended from his guard before he started spinning around at his side. Sage looked over his sword at the spinning blade and realized his opponent now had range. He lifted his sword up with a yell and blocked as Naruto wiped his kodachi out. The short blade slid along the blunt side of the sword in a shower of sparks. Sage blocked the kick and pushed the blonde back. Naruto stumbled on his feet before reeling in the wire and snatching his kodachi. Sage lifted up his sword and started spinning around at incredible speeds, knocking back all the arrows and projectiles behind being shot at him. The massive blade user stopped his spin and pointed his blade towards the blonde. Naruto narrowed his eyes before smirking. He clicked the button on the tip of the hilt, the rest of it snapping open as an arrow clip popped out in front of him. He snatched it out of the air and changed it with a clip from his arm guard. He closed the latch before aiming the end of the hilt at Sage. The green-haired boy raised his blade in defense as several arrows fired at him, but he didn't prepare for the arrows to explode on impact, knocking him off his feet and onto the ground. The crowd clapped and cheered as the round continued to escalate. He's put dust in the arrows, Wise observed before crossing her arms and nodding approvingly in his choice of enhancement. Her smile twisted with smugness. I have to give him credit. Knowing the power of some Shinitasta could exponentially increase the destructive force of his projectiles. Projectiles was the next logical step in his fighting style. Well, I'm sure if he added more dust to his style, we get it already. Stop with the sales pitch. Your dad really handled all the changes for his weapon. That is so cool. Ruby asked Tenten while her eyes continued to stay fixated on the fight. How long did it take to temper the metal from that sword? How much wire does it have? Can you make one for me too? Shh! They all hushed the red-tipped girl as she hung her head with a blush of embarrassment. So Neptune shared a look and smirked. You guys shouldn't get too excited. Why? You see our guy down there, right? He's kicking butt. Yeah, but Sage is just getting started. The green-haired huntsman in training lifted himself off the ground with a groan. Looking up, he saw his aura meter having taken a hit while Naruto's was still going strong. Sage looked over at his opponent and saw the fox waiting for him to get up. He had to appreciate the honor in letting him get up to fight at least. Big mistake. Sage grabbed the hilt of his sword and started to spin with the blade outwards. Naruto raised his defense in response and prepared for the Haven boy to make his way over to attack. What he didn't prepare for is Sage letting go of the sword and sending it flying towards him like a giant metal death trap. Naruto's eyes widened before he jumped over the blade before it could take off his legs. He gagged when Sage dashed in and caught him by the throat. Naruto grabbed the arm holding him up, but realized Sage's grip was unbreakable. The green-haired teen narrowed his eyes before turning around and slamming Naruto down on the floor. The blonde gasped, but before Sage could lift him up again, he wrapped his arms and legs around the limb. With a sharp turn of his body, he twisted Sage's arm and forced the huge Haven boy to move as well, so his arm didn't snap. Sage dove into a roll and pulled his arm out of Naruto's hold before the two boys stopped on their knees. They jumped back up and ran to face each other. And Sage threw a few white punches out at Naruto and forced the faunas to bob and weave around them. After another hook, Naruto ducked underneath it and swung at Sage's back. The green-haired boy turned and blocked the blade with the pauldron on his shoulder. He swung for Naruto's head again as the blonde blocked his punch and kicked at his knee. And Sage dropped to his knee and grabbed the kick coming for his head. He turned and threw the blonde. Naruto rolled over the ground before jumping back up and throwing his kodachi out. Sage, avoiding the blade, whipped out at him and stayed on his toes. The blonde yelled and spun the kodachi as wide and fast as he could as Sage started strafing. Sage smacked the kodachi down when he got the chance and charged forward before kicking Naruto in the gut. The blonde went to the floor but yelled and reeled in his wire. Sage looked down and saw Naruto's weapon and wire lying by his feet. Before wrapping around them, his legs were pulled out from under him and he dropped to the ground. Naruto got back up and charged the Haven boy. Sage reached down and untied the wire from his feet before Naruto could reach him. He pulled himself up and charged at Naruto again. barreling into the blonde's chest. Naruto gagged and landed on his back as Sage ran to grab his broadsword. Naruto pushed himself up in time to see Sage roar and swing his blade in towards the blonde. Naruto raised his arm as the sword slammed into the arm guards. The fox winced in pain as he was lifted off his feet and sent flying across the stage. His friends and teammates looked down in worry at the state of their new friend. The fear that one stray attack might shred through his body and send him back to the hospital was a nightmare they had already seen once. Ruby's legs bounced with anxiety and she looked up at Tenten for her reaction. But even though the older girl's expression looked strained, she still had a small and glint of excitement in her eyes. The silver-eyed girl looked up at her in confusion before Tenten muttered, "He's got this. Just watch." Naruto groaned as he lifted himself up and felt a painful sting join on his arms. He was so glad to have these guards now, because if this was how much it hurt guarding with them, he could just imagine the mess he'd be in without them. But that sword was still going to be a problem. The blonde stood back up and squared his shoulders as Sage hefted the blade to his side. The green-haired student charged him with the massive sword held back to swing it to Naruto. Again, he heard his friend call for him to move or dodge or anything to evade. But he wanted to test something out. He had planned to use this while there were so many people still watching. Shikaku said to have an ace concealed up his sleeve. It looks like it was time to use it. Naruto took a deep breath and imagined himself standing in a deep puddle. With a long breath, he reached down and submerged his arm into the water. And just this was enough to control. Sage swung his blade and Naruto yelled as he raised his hand to defend, and the whole room went quiet when Naruto caught the blade in his hand. Sage's eyes widened in shock. He had swung the blade as hard as he could, and there was still a result from Naruto wincing and his body getting pushed back. But Sage could no longer pull his blade back from within the grip of the fox's glowing orange arm. The aura cloaked the blonde's arm from the tip of his fingers to the end of his elbow. The strong orange light engulfing it was almost like the shimmering flame, this dancing and wafting over his forearm while his grip remained on the blade he caught. The blonde's eyes were narrowed in serious concentration as Sage started pulling back on his blade. Before they could get into a show of strength, Naruto released the sword and sent Sage stumbling back. With that opening, the blonde dashed in and slammed his foot into the taller boy's stomach. Sage slid across the stage and winced before grabbing his sword again. Naruto blocked it, the massive broadsword with his kodachi, pressing the back of his blade with his aura-covered hand to better withstand the force. They pushed away and started exchanging strikes as fast as they could. Naruto knocked the broadsword away but felt his head jerk back when Sage got a kick up into his chin. However, Naruto responded by kicking him in return and forcing Sage to step away. Naruto moved his chin around and felt no numbness affecting him. A big grin took his face as he took advantage of another side effect cloaking his arm had given him. When his aura was activated like this, it covered the rest of his body like everyone else. When he utilized his semblance, his aura no longer acted passively and merely healed his wounds instead of actively reaching out to cover the rest of his body and protect him. He shouldn't be excited considering that's exactly how every other person's aura worked in all of Remington, but this was new to him. He felt empowered, like his whole body was lighter, but still hard as a rock. Was this what everyone else felt with their aura like? Because he was loving it. Sage raised his blade in preparation as Naruto aimed the end of his hilt at the Haven student. Sage had prepared for another barrage of explosive arrows to come flying towards him, but he and everyone else was surprised when Naruto instead covered the hilt of his aura cover hand and fired. What happened when aura interacted with aura? When it does interact with aura, in an instant the glowing forearm was wreathed in flames. The thought that his arm looked on fire before paled to reality of the violent dancing heat that now covered it. Sage's eyes widened and Naruto grinned as he took the largest teen surprise for granted. Sage panicked and raised his blade to block as Naruto landed a punch right in the middle. Sage was thrown back into the wall by the immense force of the explosion against his sword. Naruto still had some steam and smoke wafting off of his arm As the aura over his forearm dissipated, he released it because the moment Sage hit the boundary, there was the telltale sign that the match had ended. The lights turned back on, and the crowd cheered for the match they had just witnessed. The blonde started making his way over to the Haven student while sheathing his blade. He finally reached him as Sage looked up in time to see an offered hand and Naruto's grin. That was pretty awesome, huh? If Sage was angry or sour about how the match had ended, then he didn't let it show. He chuckled and showed a small smirk as he took the offered hand. I can see why Son's so impressed with you and your friends. We didn't mean to leave an impression, I swear. The victor's Naruto Uzumaki. Glinda strode up to the two boys and pushed her glasses up her nose. Mr. Ayana, your sword no doubt proves quite handy when it comes to facing Grandma, but against more agile opponents it appears to hinder you greatly. However, you seem to notice this and abandoned it when you found opportunity. Catching your opponent off guard and breaking his defense down before returning for your sword, I suggest you prepare for contingencies such as that if that sword ever proves to compromise you in a fight. The green-haired boy politely nodded at the teacher's observation. Mr. Uzumaki. Naruto's whole body went still as he prepared for whatever critique she had to offer. Many of the pointers I gave you last semester still apply. However, I'm pleased to see you've finally been able to utilize your semblance in your favor. Naruto smiled. That was the closest he would ever get. Congratulations, and I'm glad to see you're doing better. From Glinda Goodwitch. Hunting, your students are just as extraordinary as usual, Oz. However, don't count my students out of the running just yet. Osmond hid an amused smile behind his mug at the not so subtle challenging tone his old friend had laced with that statement. Don't get angsty, James. The students will have more opportunities to face each other in the coming weeks, and the tournament is not that far off either. If you're so eager for our students to fight, then you won't have to wait long. I thought I sounded as bloodthirsty as you're insinuating I did, but I suppose I shall apologize anyway. One of the strongest men in all of Remnant and general of the largest army of the world chuckled and fixed his collar. The salt and pepper-haired man regarded his old friend. I'm still dealing with the lag from traveling. Could use some proper rest to relax myself. Well, since you're staying, I suppose you'll have more than enough time to relax. Ironwood sighed and laughed with a dry chuckle. I'd almost suspect you of rubbing me because I'm certain you've seen the amount of paperwork I deal with daily, but you're better than that, so I'll let it slide. James still frowned as Osmond hid a playful smile behind his sipping. You must be proud to see how far they've come since joining your school. Osmond lowered his drink and looked down from the area at the students. His eyes drifted to one of his more favorite group, a group of learned youngsters, as a certain blonde rejoined his friends, while his green opponent joined his team as well. He fondly watched the youngsters stare in amazement as Naruto showed them the fruits of his labor. With his arm clad in aura, he shook his head. I can't take credit for how much they've grown. They did it mostly on their own. If anything, Beacon stands as a place these kids can branch out from and learn to grow themselves. It's not the same up in Atlas. James folded his arms behind his back and stood like a pillar of a man he was, the unflappable leader of the army and the school. We need to train them as best as we can, discipline in order to ensure they can become the most skilled and capable soldiers they can be. Osmond closed his eyes and silenced the rebuttal that attempted to slip from his lips. We're not in a time of war, James. It hardly seems like the peaceful utopia we advertised either, the stern general responded. The other day my shipment was hit, carrying some experimental and dangerous equipment. It was being guarded by squadrons of my soldiers, good men. And Osmond heard the telltale sound of metal grinding together behind James' back. The general didn't finish as he was sure the message got across. That shipment was stolen, and now the people with it out there are more dangerous than ever. I'm sorry about your men, James, but you can't use losses like that in order to perpetuate your desire to spread out your forces. Don't play the fool, Osmond. It doesn't suit you. The general narrowed his eyes. You received Crow's message, right? Of course I did. Then we need to prepare. We need to stay rational, Osmond countered as Ironwood furrowed his eyes. We're hardly going to be doing any good if we act panicked and move at the first sign of any movement. Considering it's her making the movements, James shook his head. I think it's acceptable to be worried. That's what they want. They want us scrambling and they want us to be afraid and make sloppy moves. Osmond spoke with the firmness in his age when he saw James make to argue. We need to stay strong and calm and level-headed. The world needs that of us. Can you be prepared for that? James. Arnwood stared at his friend in silence before taking a sharp breath through his nose and turning on the spot. He started heading to the exit as Osmond turned to watch the fight. Don't make a move, Osmond. She's always waiting to make the next move. No amount of patience or level-headedness will prepare us for the day she starts dancing. When that day comes, we'll need a strength on our side to counter it. I'm dreading that day, and even if it's not in my lifetime, I'm still preparing for it. I hope you can say the same. Ironwood finally walked out of the ranger after leaving the headmaster with those final words. James was a good man, paranoid, preparing to take a preemptive action in order to stop a problem from even surfacing. Osmond forgot something that even though they were good friends, they didn't always see eye to eye. But he was right about one thing: the day she made her move was coming. Hunting. So this guy doesn't even talk. Nope, he's totally silent, and he looks scary and intimidating because he's as big as a beowulf. But I met him feeding birds. Plus, he seems really nice and likes to listen to my stories. Ruby smiled. He's got this weird take where he'll flinch and twitch sometimes, but he's still cool. My baby sis actually made an effort to talk to someone, and didn't even have to force her to do it. Yang cooed and ignored the frown said little sister was sending her, and mumbling about being abandoned again. The boisterous blonde slumped down in her seat with disappointment. No, I feel like it was the better move to walk around and meet people instead. I missed out. If you want to meet someone, I can introduce you to a particular fellow we met the other day. Ren added while skimming through a book as his partner loudly snored at his side. His name was Rock Lee. He's an upperclassman who always seems to be training. He does it hard enough that he can give Nora a run for her money. That got some of their attention as their gaze turned to the sleeping ginger. I thought it was quite strange when they were working out, but oddly enough, it seemed like the students from back here treated it like a normal occurrence. Yang whined. I missed all the fun. Enough! Weiss slammed her hands down on the table and glared between the sisters talking so freely. Would you stop engaging in stupid, idle conversation? I know you're trying to distract me. She held up the cards in her hand. It's still my turn, and I can't concentrate with your chattering. But Weiss, it's been your move for 5 minutes. Weiss turned her evil glare to her partner and watched the hooded girl's mouth shut close instantaneously. The Schnee Harris dropped back down in her seat and stared at her cards harshly and waiting for them to make sense. Her gaze lifted from the colorful nonsensical pieces of plastic and focused on the big board of nonsensical plastic on the table. Her gaze turned between all the people watching her, judging her while she made her move. Yang propped herself up on one arm and exaggeratedly drummed her fingers over the table. Blake was blankly staring off to the side. So there was at least that relief. Ruby was holding a quiet conversation with Naruto, who dragged a seat over to sit at her side and watch the match. Plus, there was the rest of them sitting on the table behind her, judging her. She was by Schnee, Harris the Schnee Dust Company, and soon to be top hunters in Remington, and she didn't know how the hell to play this game. The distracted Harris flinched when a hand wrapped in gauze reached over her shoulder and pointed to a set of cards in her hands. It pulled back, and she looked at the suggested moves over before realizing how good they would be. She lowered the cards and felt conflicted about how to address the boy behind her before she coldly stated over her shoulder, "Thank you. Hey, no helping." Yang accused Uchiha, standing behind Weiss before he raised his hands and stepped aside. She looked back across the table just in time to see Ruby and Naruto separate and whistle nonchalantly. Yang narrowed her eyes. "All of you colluding together. Despicable. Am I right?" She didn't get much response from her partners in return. Sourpuss. "What's up, party dozen?" A few dry, unimpressed looks from his audience made the monkey raise his hands defensively. "Okay, apparently you guys just want us to stick to normal dirty, then, right?" Naruto sighed. "None of us are okay with that, right? Not just me. I mean, we can workshop it. Is it too late to workshop it?" "Well, it's been circulating on Reddit for a few months," Neptune stated despite his partner. "So, yeah." Naruto slumped in his chair as Ruby just patted his head sympathetically, and Pyrrha smiled from her spot at the other table and tried to look at the brighter side of carrying that moniker. "Well, the name might stick around, but that doesn't mean that people will immediately associate it with us." "That's true." Tintin nodded. "I mean, there has to be another group of friends with at least 12 members in it at the school, right?" New plan. Kiba popped up. We find who coined that name and signal on them. The short ginger growled in her sleep as if she knew she was being talked about. So what are you guys doing? Looks like studying and working. That's boring. The table glared at the monkey for writing it off like that so quickly before his attention turned to the closer table. Oh, you guys playing Permanent? I love that game. Totally suck at it, but you still love playing. It's a strategic game, and that tests the limits of your tactical thinking. It's not really up your alley, dude. Neptune pointed out as Sun just accepted it with a shrug. He turned to the white-haired girl. How about you, Snow Angel? Conquering the other kingdoms? It's fine. I'm doing fine. This silly game isn't overwhelming me or anything. Weiss ranted. This is child's play. Literally child's play. Does it look like I'm having a hard time? Because I'm literally not. The Schnee slammed the cards, pointing out to her down and smiled. How about that? Oh, good move. And I respond with, Yang dropped a card. This. Now our armies are trapped on the border of your desert, with moving being totally impossible, with the threat of Grim tearing them all apart. Weiss's eyes became pinholes and her jaw hung open in shock. She looked around as all of her friends and companions ducked their heads or avoided her eyes completely. The ivory-haired girl could do nothing else but hang her head and shake with dismay. Blake? The black-haired beauty looked up when she realized she was being addressed. The others were waiting for her to make her move as the faunus examined her cards. After a moment of staring at her hand, she sighed and shook her hand. I'm sorry, but I can't focus at the moment. And they looked between each other before Ruby asked them, Is something wrong, Blake? I need some help. Sun came over to her side. I know how to play the game. I might not be the best, but here. Blake held the cards out for him to take as the monkey looked at them oddly. He picked them out, and the raven-haired girl made her way around him and towards the exit. I don't think I can play anymore. I'll see you all later. The others watched the faunus make her way out as they were left behind. Sun stared at the cards left to him and the veil section left in his command before he sat down. He blanked. This hand ain't the best. Here, man. Neptune came over to his friend's side. I'll help you play. Hey, no fair. No outside help. Yang objected and pointed at the two boys. Let him fail by himself. You don't see us getting help from others. Ruby can help you play. Totally. Partners. Naruto and Ruby clapped hands and grinned in preparation to conquer the world. Weiss grumbled to herself as Yang narrowed her eyes and grinned. Okay, you kids want help. Good luck, but I'm still gonna win. Hunting. How did I lose? Yang bellowed and scratched the top of her head in annoyance as they made their way back into the room. We never should have let that Neptune guy participate. He was just too good with his geekiness. I think he called it intelligence. It's all the same thing. And you. She dramatically pointed at her little sister and caused the short-hooded girl to yelp and flinch back in fear. You were getting help from Naruto. That's the only reason you lasted so long before you got beaten. It was strategic thinking. Ruby defended, crossing her arms and pouting. I made up all the plans. Naruto just to proofread them or something. That's it. How is someone leading a country and asking someone else to proofread their plans of conquering not working together? At least Weiss had the decency to fail spectacularly on her own. Weiss' hair bristled as she was forced to listen to the two sisters bicker. The two had the audacity to argue about which one of them performed better in that stupid game and not even involve her in the discussion, which meant they already came to an agreement that she performed terribly and didn't even have to talk about it. Sure, her playing was abysmal, but it was a dumb game. Weiss unlocked the door with an angry huff and stomped her way in as her partner and teammates slipped in behind her. The heroism made for her bed and prepared to strategically think over every move and possibility she could have made to successfully win that game before calmly letting go and accepting her defeat. She wasn't going to grumble and pout in her bed. She wasn't. While she made her way over with the sound of Ruby and Yang pointlessly arguing, she looked over to the other side of the room. She spotted Blake sitting against the wall of her bed. The faunus looked dispirited and wasn't even acknowledging their rival or the siblings' excessive noise. Very unlike Blake. What's wrong? Weiss asked while finally getting the cat girl's attention. You look troubled. It's nothing, just a little distracted. Blake deflected and pulled herself off of her bed. She aimed for the door but was blocked off when Weiss stepped up to stand in front of her. Blake closed her eyes and gave a heavy sigh before looking at the shorter girl. Can you please move? Only when you tell me what's wrong. The sneak girl stubbornly responded and crossed her arms while staring directly into Blake's eyes. The fondness groaned lightly as Weiss frowned. You've been much too distracted lately. Don't think we haven't noticed. You don't talk. You leave when you get the first chance. You're reclusive and constantly on edge. And I know that's usually how you act, but this is to an almost ludicrous degree. Yeah, she's right. The fondness turned to her partner as the blonde shrugged. You have been pretty preoccupied lately. Plus, we know it hasn't been just from the beginning of the semester. Blake narrowed her eyes before looking towards the last member of their team. Ruby reluctantly looked down under her scrutiny stare before nodding. Sasuke and Rain told us what happened over the break. How you kept going between the library and our room halfway through the break. We were gonna talk to you about it, but we never had a chance because you were always gone. And now you're here, so it's the perfect time. Blake's eyes wandered to the side. Do you remember what I said to you that night on the docks? If there's something you want to say, you can say it to us. So I'll reiterate what I said as Blake closed her eyes and lowered her head. What's wrong? Blake took a deep breath and sighed before finally looking up at her team. I can't get the White Fang out of my head. I can't get Torchwick and whatever that horrible thug is trying to do out of my head. The idea that they're out there right now planning something terrible and I'm stuck here at school is just maddening. The others looked between each other in silence, already figuring that was what was bothering their friend, but worried about just how badly she was handling it. But remember what Osmond told us that night. The professors can handle this, so we shouldn't worry. Well, I am worried. Blake shook her head. I'm sorry, but I can't just sit here and wait for things to go wrong. I want to do something. I have to do something. Blake reached under her bed and pulled out the notebook she had been utilizing for weeks. I've been collecting as much data about the White Fang, Torchwick, and the noble guards as I can for weeks. I can't just sit back and trust someone else with this. This is my fight. So what? Weiss inquired. You want to go out there and fight them, start a war with the White Fang? No, it's a figure of speech. Blake groaned. I mean, I'm not just going to do nothing. I have to try something, anything to try and stop them. I know them. I was a part of this. I couldn't stop the White Fang before it became what it is now, but I can stop it before they go too far. Do you want to do this alone? Ruby asked and stepped up to her friend. Blake looked down at her, let the leader and gazed into her silver eyes. Blake felt her answer hang on the tip of her tongue with fear of how her team would react. Well, you aren't gonna. Blake looked at Ruby in shock before the hooded girl turned around to her team. She faced her sister and Yang grinned and nodded her head. Blake stared at her partner in shock before Ruby smiled and nodded. They all turned to the Harris and waited for her reply. Weiss's shoulders sagged. Let me get this straight. You want to go against the White Fang? Team Ruby against one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the whole world. A bunch of huntresses in training about to take them down? Sure, why not? They looked at Weiss in surprise as the Harris reluctantly agreed. I mean, after robbing trains, busting up clubs, fighting criminals, taking down a mob boss, facing off against a vigilante group in the middle of a city, and stopping a massive robbery of dust, why not try fighting off the White Fang? The Shnee shook her head. Our list of illegal activity is already long enough. Why not make it longer? That's the spirit. Facetious. Blake looked around the room at her teammates in wonder. They were really going to help her with this. They knew just how dangerous this task was, but they were undergoing it nonetheless. Okay, we got a mission. Now we just need a plan. Let's go tell the others. Wait. Blake went to grab Ruby's hood before she could run out the door. The short girl gagged and rubbed her throat before looking back. We can't bring Noctix and Juniper in on this. This idea is dangerous enough with just the four of us. Bringing in more people, but they're our friends. We've been through everything together. Ruby quickly responded. Plus, it's dangerous, but it'll be easier if we do it all together. Gotta agree with Ruby on this one. Yang spoke up with a nod of her head. Considering all the other crazy crap we've been through together, it'd be more comfortable knowing we're going up against a giant organization like that with those guys at our backs. Blake's mouth opened and closed before looking to Weiss for her input. The Harris was silently listening before nodding in agreement. It had her worried. If they screwed up somehow, then it would be all of their lives on the line. It was scary enough putting her team on the line, but now all of her friends. She wanted to protest, but hesitated as she thought They were right. Whatever their chances were by themselves, it would probably be safer with all of them together. Blake wrestled with the idea before she found herself standing before Noctix's door beside Ruby. She knocked on the door and looked up at the fox friend as her fox friend greeted them. She nodded. "We may need your help." Extra further down the rabbit hole, Blake walked into the cafeteria and spotted her friends all conversing at the table. She approached it and spotted all the familiar faces of Team Ruby, Noctix, Juniper, and even Sun and Neptune. Sun was the first to notice her and waved. Hey, there she is. What's up, Grumpy Cat?" Blake glowered with annoyance at the monkey's lackadaisical addressing of her heritage. Was there something about keeping her identity secret that just didn't get through that thick head of his? The hidden fondness merely gave up on trying to keep her thoughts as she took a seat by her team and looked over her friends, happily joking around, joyously discussing how they would do homework, debating on what movie they were going to see on the weekend. It was so peaceful, so blissful. Bella Booty. They went silent. Not just her friends, but the entire cafeteria suddenly went quiet, as if death had fallen over them. Blake looked around in surprise at the rigid, still the forms of all the people she had never even talked to, with clamped up at the utterance of that word. Even people from the other schools. Blake scrunched up her face and turned to the group she knew best before growling out, "What do you know?" The cafeteria cleared out almost instantly as it was just her and the group of people she was extremely accusing. She saw a few of her friends shaking and avoiding eye contact. Even Ruby was sweating profusely when she felt her gaze. Blake raised an eyebrow. "What? Okay," John crumbled and yelled. "We know, but Sun was the one who told me." "Dude, not cool." Sun yelled back. "Me and Neptune heard it from Nora. Don't look at me. Pierre whispered it to me and ran one night as a joke. I didn't think it would actually mean anything. Tintin told me. Royce told it to me. We were having a sweet moment with me consoling her, and she just told it to me. Don't put this on me. I remember Sasuke was the one who told me. It was Kiba. Ruby wanted to pet Akamaru and told me about it as collateral. But I didn't make it up. I heard it from Naruto." When there was no more admissions or confessions, all eyes turned to the guilty fox. His whole body was shivering, ears resting on his head as he looked like he was gonna have an accident. Blake's eyes narrowed, and she got out of her seat to slowly stalk up to him. She stood over the blonde and pinched on one of his fox ears as he let out a little whimper. "Explain. It's actually a funny story. It happened during the first semester." Naruto stuttered as his friends were already looking for exits to take. "I was watching you in one of the spars and noticed you were very fast and agile, and how you must have a lot of control and must be very limber in order to move like that. And while I discussed what your training schedule must be like, you were standing on my butt. I get it." Blake interrupted with a dark, unamused tone and tugged on his ears. "So why don't you tell me why you thought it would be funny to refer to my backside as that? I didn't. At least not all me. Not admitted. I didn't make the name. I just made the observation. That doesn't make it any better. Besides, I figured it wasn't you that made the name. It sounded like a bad pun." All eyes turned to the other blonde at the table, whistling and avoiding all eye contact. Yang finally looked up in the corner of her eye and spotted Blake's glare. She chuckled awkwardly. Hey, buddy." "Excuse me, everyone." Blake walked out of the cafeteria, dragging one blonde by the ear and the other by the hair. They screamed and thrashed and begged for help as the cat girl promised unimaginable punishment. "I have some rude little children to reprimand." End of chapter 50.